What's going on, guys? Ben Brewster here, triathletics.com. Today we're joined by Dr. Nevin Markel. If you haven't seen any of our previous Q&A videos with him, we're going to make sure to link those in the description below. But just as a quick overview of Nevin's background, he's worked with hundreds of professional athletes from MLB to NFL to NBA, PGA. He's worked with them all, but specifically as it relates to triathletics, he's the guy that whenever we have an athlete that comes with a stubborn injury that they just aren't able to shake, he's the guy that we send him to kind of break through that barrier. Specifically as it relates to my own career, I've been working with Nevin and going to him for several years now, and he's been absolutely invaluable as far as both the rehab process, but also just furthering my knowledge of anatomy, soft tissue, and rehabilitation. So Nevin, first off, thanks for joining us. Specifically for this video, I want to touch on a common issue in baseball. We know Tommy John is kind of an epidemic. It's a huge issue, but it's currently thought of as basically just get Tommy John, rehab, rest for a year, come back slowly and you'll be fine. It's basically just thought of as this plug and play procedure. But Nevin, having rehabbed a lot of these Tommy John injuries, kind of sees it from a little bit of a different perspective. It's not necessarily as simple as just let's rest, let's let the ligament heal, and let's just come back a year later. So, having done so many of these, I know there's a lot of much more subtle concerns or things that therapists miss. Could we kind of go over some of the common oversights or maybe misconceptions that people have when it comes to Tommy John rehab? Like maybe one or two things that are just commonly missed that you address, but that athletes don't typically address.
Well, I mean, commonly missed, I think it'd be more interesting to look at, just some other perspectives on it, which I certainly don't have all the answers when it comes to that, but things that I've observed in my career with a lot of high-level athletes and then applying some of the modern understanding of things we talked about like fascia. You start to see the arm and the ligament of the elbow a little bit differently than maybe the conventional, which is, just bone, ligament, tendon, muscle, and that's it. Addressing the connective tissue in rehab, I think, is really important. So when you have a ligament that fails and ruptures, and throwing, unfortunately, leads to that sometimes, I think it's about building the continuity back of the entire arm and how that arm relates not only to the ligament elbow itself, but to the entire body. So what we'll see, they repair the ligament. It does a great job. The surgeon does an excellent job. But in that process of having the injury or maybe throwing through the injury for a while without knowing it, I think the brain starts to learn to coordinate the arm differently in terms of function. So it works around pain or changes function, with the muscles and ligaments and how they interrelate. So I think when you look at the rehab process, it's about restoring function, but what that means is making sure that the tissue quality is accounted for, that that they don't develop collateral issues like scar or tissue densification that could affect not only their mobility but their proprioception. And then, like I said before, that tissue needs to not only heal, but it needs to heal in the context that every joint above and below and connected through the whole kinetic chain is functional, and hopefully more functional than it was before, because one has to wonder and ask, how did that ligament fail to begin with? Why was that the overload point in their injury process? So that's, for me, is just trying to integrate that with everything, just rather than just isolate it to the elbow, trying to do that, of course, but work with the entire body and improve their function in the time that they're trying to come back to throw better than ever.
And it's interesting because I've gone through an elbow surgery and doing a big piece of that rehab with Nevin, and he says that you want to look at more than just the actual site of the injury. You want to look at the global, the entire kinetic chain. Nevin, you often talk about how when there's an injury, it's the real question to ask is, why is that tissue paying the price versus just blaming the direct tissue? And then also, I know in my case, you have kind of a background as a thrower, having thrown javelin in college. But you took care to look at my delivery and look at my mechanics, and so talk a little bit about that as far as why certain tissues might be paying the price,
right?
And why you feel it's so important to really assess an athlete's throwing mechanics, except aside from just looking at them on a table statically and just looking at the elbow.
Right. I think that's highly important because people, and I can be guilty of this too, that you see the surgery, you see what was done, you see the problem at hand, and you want to try and prescribe the rehab process for that isolated tissue or injured segment. But I think in the end, anybody would agree who's been around baseball that your arm, of course you throw with your arm, but I think that's a little incomplete, because it's really a transmission of force from the ground through the kinetic chain, every joint, every muscle in the body from the ground up, and transferring well through the arm and through the hand. And things like arm angle, arm slot, and all these various things are a byproduct of how the whole body functions from the ground up. So I think you would find, and there's some interesting research in the Major League Baseball now that's coming out that's starting to show that some of these elbow and shoulder issues on the throwing athlete are related to, for instance, contralateral hip problems, limitations, etc. So I think in your case, or a lot of the athletes, I think it's critical that you look at their entire functionality to understand, okay, they had a problem. Let's not only make sure that that ligament heals well, but let's make sure that we clean up any mechanical issues and tissue problems that exist in their whole chain so they throw better.
Guys, if you found this video helpful or interesting, Nevin has a ton of information out there online. Go follow him on Instagram at anatomylinks. Also, if you're struggling with an injury yourself, Nevin actually has a therapy clinic in Charlotte, North Carolina. You can reach out via his website, which we'll link in the video description below. Thanks for watching.